Welcome to Wired for Wealth, the podcast for ambitious people with a wild side. If you feel there's way more to your vision for success than just the money, and you want to create a life of financial freedom and fulfillment where joy comes first, then you're in the right place. I'm Abby Rogers, therapist, mentor, and expert on all things mindset, subconscious, and manifestation. And I'm here to help you create anxiety-free, stress-free freedom and wealth that aligns with your soul. Let's dive in. Hi, so today I want to talk to you about two things which are two sides of the same coin. So self-care, something you will no doubt be very familiar with, and self-leadership. And these are two things for me that, having worked with a lot of people over the years who really struggle to put themselves first and kind of know what they should be doing in terms of self-care. They're like very self-aware people. They understand what it takes to look after their body and mind and get the best out of themselves, but they still really struggle to do that. And it's become clear that self-leadership is really the thing that facilitates that ability to do good self-care. So I wanted to talk to you about this today, about the dynamic between those two things and what I've identified as basically the 7 stages of self-care, the 7 steps that we need to go through to be able to do that self-care really effectively and to be looking after ourselves in a really good and empowered and supportive way. Self-leadership is something we talk about a lot less often. And I think that really we should be talking about it a whole lot more. So there's this idea out there that self-care is just about this like decision that can be made, that it's just like, yeah, I'm going to decide to do X, Y, Z. Maybe I'm going to do yoga every day. Maybe I'm going to do some cold water immersion. Maybe I'm going to cook myself really nutritious meals. And it's just like the way we imagine it is that we can just kind of turn that on and off, and it's easy to be either committed to your self-care and doing all the things, or it's not. And I think actually there's a process that we really have to go through to be able to do that. It's not just as simple as switching a switch and all of a sudden saying, I'm going to take really good care of myself and I'm going to fulfill all my needs. If we're not in the right place, if we don't have these 7 stages in place, first of all, then we're going to find it really, really difficult. So I want to talk to you about those 7 stages, what they are, and what you need to be getting in place to be able to open the door to doing all the things that you've been telling yourself that you need to do. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope it is helpful and switches on maybe some light bulbs for you today. Now, I want to talk a bit about what self-care is, first of all, because I think in recent years, the lines have become a bit blurred and it can be quite hard to tell the difference between what we think of as self-care and true self-care. So sometimes what we imagine to be self-care can be quite a superficial version of that, and it's not actually allowing us to get to that really kind of deep, fulfilling level of self-care that we need. So when I say superficial self-care, I mean doing the things that we think we should be doing or which society says we should do in order to look after ourselves and our emotional well-being. And health and self-care is big business right now. We're talking like $1 trillion industry, right? So there are lots of ways to go out there and spend your money and think you're doing good self-care when actually you're maybe not. Or maybe even worse, you're going out there and doing the opposite. So, for example, like you book a spa break because you've heard that's good self-care. You go on it with your friends and you find that you have a big falling out with them. You find that it proves to be more stressful rather than relaxing and wonderful. Or maybe you're doing like regular maintenance, going to the hair appointments, having the bleaching, the polishing, the waxing, whatever it is. And that starts to feel like more of a chore rather than real self-care. You find that you're not enjoying it and it's like this ongoing commitment in your diary rather than real time out that you're actually enjoying. Or maybe you're going there like with the intention of enjoying it, but you're finding you're sitting there worrying and stressing the whole time rather than actually chilling out. Maybe you're doing work. Or the holiday that's more about pleasing your family rather than what you truly want and becomes a massive stress fest, or that you go on because you think it's something to tick off your bucket list, and this bucket list rather than really fulfilling things has become this kind of must-do list. So true self-care is really all about checking in with yourself and what you truly want and truly need. And most critically, it's about prioritising those things. So it's not always pretty or fancy. It's not always the expensive things by any means. Sometimes it's absolutely free. Very often it's absolutely free. And it's very often more about what seems mundane or the tiny moments that are maybe completely insignificant to everybody else. So for me, for example, there's just nothing more instantly good for me than just like closing my eyes, sitting in the sun or in a sunny spot in the house for 5 or 10 minutes and just listening to the bird song or just thinking of nothing and just allowing myself that decompression time. That is pure self-care for me, and it's absolutely free. And it might not look very glamorous, but it's great. So we might call that meditation. We might just call that allowing ourselves time to just be. And I think actually as humans, we are all intrinsically wired to want those bits of downtime, to seek out those little moments for ourselves. And we definitely need them. We know from the science that they are so good for our emotional and mental well-being. And I would say absolutely fundamental. In fact, so often though, we ignore that, don't we? We like push it away, push it down, just tell ourselves to keep going. And in a way, it's almost no wonder that we find ourselves procrastinating and staring out the window and not doing the things we're meant to be doing, because our brain's just like, no, I need this. I'm going to put the brakes on and allow myself a little bit of headspace because you're just making me work too hard all the time. So maybe that's food for thought if you often find yourself doing that or distracted. Maybe it's that there's not quite enough permitted distraction time in the first place. Worth thinking about. So self-care isn't selfish. This is a phrase that you may have heard bandied around, and it's absolutely true, because when we are looking after ourselves mentally, physically, we are much nicer, happier, healthier humans, much more able to be rational, reasonable, much less inclined to lose it or project our frustrations out into the world around us. But it's hard to do that sometimes, right? Life's so busy and we get swept up in all the big stuff and all the grand gestures and all the things that we think we ought to be doing. And we tend to end up bypassing those natural urges and just forgetting to give ourselves what we really need. So this is where self-leadership comes in. Self-leadership is the thing that allows us to do the self-care. It's the thing that stops us from just crashing into only booking time off when we are absolutely broken and need a break. It's the thing that stops us going to rock bottom before we do something about it. It's the thing that stops us from putting it off and getting swept up in all that busy life and all the stuff that we feel like we have to do that 9 times out of 10 we really don't. Because it's so easy to say to ourselves, oh, I'll do it tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, and keep putting it off and off, when deep down we do know that we need to do something. And then we start giving ourselves a hard time for not doing the thing. And there can just be this whole heap of reasons why, no matter what we consciously want to do, that we never actually get around to it. So self-leadership then is about being completely in touch with ourselves in the here and now, and really being able to connect with ourselves and silence all that noise, and being able to identify what it is that we truly need, and then giving ourselves and our needs the attention that they deserve and making them a priority. And I think that is where most people do fall down. The reasons we struggle with that Firstly, because we're conditioned to believe that our needs aren't important and that to listen to them is selfish, or that spending time on ourselves is a waste of time, or that it makes us lazy. And we have to remember that our needs are important because they are needs. The clue is in the word. They are basic and fundamental to our well-being and to our happiness and our ability to thrive within our lives and relationships. They're not wants, they're not being selfish. They are about doing what we basically need to do to survive and thrive. Likewise, spending time on ourselves. It's amazing how much time we spend on stuff that's fairly inconsequential. We find lots of little jobs to do, don't we, rather than really spend the time on ourselves. Mundane things that really don't achieve much in the long run, and that we're so good at convincing ourselves we have to do. Or being busy for reasons that we convince ourselves are important, like being on social media, getting sucked down the YouTube rabbit hole, working. But spending real time on ourselves, somehow that's off limits. Like, these things are worth more than our happiness and our well-being. Which, when it comes to work, that's kind of bonkers, isn't it, in a way? Because most of us are working to create a better, more relaxed, happier life. And yet, so often we just end up running around in circles, chasing all the work that we think we should be doing and making ourselves extra busy. And many of us have also been brought up with this idea that it would be lazy or would make us a bad person to take time out of our day just to do nothing. And really, if we were to do that, what would happen? No bad things would happen. Nobody's sitting there judging how we spend our time, other than us very often. But we imagine everybody's judging. We imagine everybody's going to be really upset with us or think we're terrible if we were to do that, if we were to even give ourselves 2 minutes, because we've really got bought into this idea that it is lazy and that we would be terrible if we weren't doing something really important or really productive or shifting the needle every single waking second. So often we fill our lives with just so much busy stuff to feel important and productive that we don't even have enough hours in the day to do all the things that we've committed to doing, and we're just kind of playing catch up all the time. I like to call this our busy badge of honour. Like, we just feel like we're kind of winning a medal or something by being busy and being on it all the time, and it's something that is completely endemic in our society. I think just nobody wants to be seen as the lazy one, the slouch. Although everyone does complain that they want an easier ride. It's amazing how when we talk to each other, we have these competitions almost over how busy we've been sometimes. Just like, listen out for it next time you're having a conversation with somebody. And if you're both going, oh, I've been so busy, we've been doing this and that. And it's interesting just to observe that sometimes. And another thing that feeds into that equation is that a lot of us have learned to show love by doing or by being the one that picks up all the pieces all the time. We feel that that's the best way to express our love. Many of us learn that people pleasing is the key to an easy and happy life, when actually it's anything but. And many of us feel shame about putting ourselves first because we feel really unworthy of that. So self-leadership is all about being able to step outside of all that. It's about really getting absolutely honest with yourself and absolutely empowered to do what is best for you. And of course, factoring in the people and the things that matter, because those are an important part of our lives, and it's important to give in a way that does feel satisfying and feels like we're being a kind person and a key part of those important people's lives. But maybe it's about sometimes adjusting that balance so that it's a healthier balance and a happier balance, making sure that it's all feeling good rather than like just giving all the time and feeling drained by that. So if I could summarise self-leadership, maybe it would be the ability to make empowered, conscious decisions that reflect what we really want and need and support our higher vision in any given moment. So it's about not being swayed by the crowd, not existing for or adjusting ourselves to please other people, just being our heart-led self and our head coming together with that and helping us co-create the reality that we want, so we don't have that internal battle going on all the time where our heart's saying one thing and our head is saying another. And good self-leadership can help us not only master our sabotaging habits and behaviours and feel way more fulfilled, but also help us elevate our actions to really define our place in the world and step up to everything that we want our experience to be. So what are those 7 stages of self-care that I was talking about earlier? So as you might know, I've been a registered therapist now for the past 7 years. And over that time, I've really developed a great understanding about the journey people go on as they make that shift into self-leadership and empowerment. Empowerment around their time and their well-being and their ability to prioritise all of the above. So 7 stages of self-care are what have come out of that experience. So stage 1 is self-reflection. It's about thinking about how you feel. And I think a lot of us do that. Not everybody, but most of us. And I imagine certainly if you're listening to this podcast, you are likely to be somebody who is interested in self-development and you do pay attention to how you feel. Self-awareness is I know how I feel. And they're quite different things. Like sometimes we think about how we feel, but we don't really connect with how we feel. We don't kind of understand it on the same level. So self-awareness is being able to really acknowledge where we're at, knowing exactly how we feel in any given moment. Self-acceptance is where this whole thing becomes a little bit harder. So stage 3, self-acceptance is about seeing the value in yourself and feeling deserving. And I think that's quite a level up in some ways, because we can understand how we feel, we can be really aware of that, but then struggle to do anything about it. And this is the turning point. This is where it really starts to come together, and all of a sudden we start to acknowledge that our needs do need to be met, and it's important that we do that. And hopefully the earlier stages of this podcast today have helped you to start going in that direction if you've struggled with that so far. Self-knowledge is the next stage, and that is about knowing what you really need. So stage 2, we talked about self-awareness, which is I know how I feel. Self-knowledge is more about knowing what is the right thing to do to help that improve. Knowing what you really need, knowing what's really going to shift the needle for you. So until we're able to accept the value in ourselves and feel deserving, we can be aware that we feel unhappy, but we might not be able to truly connect with what it is that's going to make a difference to that, because we've got this barrier there of I don't deserve it, therefore I'm going to push it away. I'm going to push the right answers away. So self-knowledge is then about I am going to allow in the right answers. I am going to connect with that part of myself that is deserving, and I'm going to question what it is that I really need to help that, to help myself feel more fulfilled. Self-allowance is then the next stage, which is allowing yourself to have what you really need. So often we know what we need, but don't allow ourselves to have it. Don't need to explain that one too much further. Self-prioritization is then putting yourself first, so we can allow ourselves to have what we really need, but only if it's not at the expense of all the other things that we think should come first. So this stage 6 self-prioritization is recognizing that we need to put ourselves above the other stuff. It's important to make room for ourselves in this whole bigger picture and make sure that our needs are met first, so that we're then able to show up with all the care and energy and attention that we really want to bring to the bigger picture. So at stage 5, where we're doing self-allowance, we might be thinking to ourselves, oh yeah, I'm gonna book out some time to do that thing when I've got time. At stage 6, we're more like, no, I'm going to make the time because I recognise that this is important and this is fundamental to everything else that I want to do. And I'm going to schedule in this time because I know that it's going to make the wheels turn so much better in every other area. To a degree, it's like sod everything else. That will find its own way. And having the confidence to do that, just being able to trust that by putting ourselves first, prioritising ourselves, that the wheels are not going to fall off, is a big shift. And I think that, again, is a place where people really tend to come unstuck. And stage 7 then is self-leadership, where we are completely in control of our conscious reality and we just feel like we're the architect of the whole thing, making the whole thing come together in a way that really works for us, but also really allows us to achieve the things that really do matter to us. And we've got that real perspective, that real overview of the whole situation, and we can really prioritise clearly and make things happen in the right way. So you can probably see from this pathway then that so much of our ability to step into that self-leadership and create a world where we feel truly fulfilled does come from self-acceptance, self-knowledge, truly understanding where we're at and what it really is we want, and then having the confidence to go there and to do it and to trust ourselves to do it. It comes from allowing, it comes from listening to ourselves in a non-judgmental way, being very grounded, and then allowing our core true self to come through and do what it really wants to do. And that's not always easy in this modern world where there are so many distractions, so many things where we feel like we've got to be in the game, we've got to stay up with the competition. It takes a really strong person to step back from that and say, this is me and I'm going to do things my way. So those 7 stages are very much about, first of all, just finding that space to ask those questions, to become truly aware, which we often think we're doing that because we're proactive and we have a desire to change and to be better. We're listening to our desires, we're journaling, but just stepping back and asking ourselves really, really what I want. What are true desires? What are false desires here? Really, really getting present and connecting with ourselves on a really deep level and allowing that truth to come through. Then it's about learning to see the value in yourself and feel deserving around that. Allowing yourself to embrace those needs, putting yourself in a place where you truly can meet your own needs while prioritising everything that's really important to you, and giving yourself the respect and appreciation and attention that you deserve in order to allow that to happen. And in many ways you could almost say that is the essence of self-care, really. When you take off all the bells and whistles and just say what is self-care on the deepest level, it's just giving yourself that respect, that appreciation, the attention that you deserve, and all the rest comes from there. It's a real self-fulfilling cycle. So hopefully this has just inspired you to start thinking a little bit differently, really checking in with the things that you need to focus on to help you grow into self-leadership and being able to truly embrace self-care. Recognising that you don't have to stay in a place where you're denying yourself and your needs to please others, and you don't have to put yourself last. And sometimes when we start to put ourselves first, shift the boundaries, shift the expectations around how we are going to show up in the world, that can feel really difficult. It's not something that's familiar, it's not something that feels comfortable or safe, and we can really worry that that might affect our relationships with others. Now, of course, I can't give you direct advice here, and a good therapist would never tell you what to do, but for most people, the best way to make any kind of change which involves implementing boundaries and shifting relationship dynamics is just by subtly shifting the way that you show up. Often it's just about shifting the energetic boundaries around what we will and won't accept, rather than bringing confrontation into the equation. Sometimes honest conversations are absolutely needed, and honesty above everything else, always, of course. But I think honest conversations can only happen when you're feeling truly assured in yourself and your power to hold those conversations without them becoming emotionally charged or unnecessarily fraught. So first of all, it's about shifting our own expectations around what reactions we might get, challenging the identity we've assumed up to now, which has been keeping us stuck in this false perception of what safe is and what normal is and how these dynamics work. And 9 times out of 10, when we start to just change from the inside and change our own expectations about things, that reflects out into the world around us, and people start to expect differently of us as well. Not always the case, of course, and if you need some help to navigate that, then please feel free to reach out anytime. But it's absolutely true that when we start to do these things, when we do start to put ourselves first, other people tend to notice that change in a really positive way, and we can show up with way more energy, attention and love for the people around us when we're not feeling frustrated and overwhelmed and all those things. So just remember that by putting yourself first, you're really putting those relationships first as well. And by no longer operating from this place of disempowerment and resentment and need, you are going to be doing everybody a favour. So I hope that has been helpful today. We've been working on this month in my Mindset membership, The Living Journal. So if you are feeling like this is something you really need to work through, you are very welcome to come along and join us on a 14-day free trial and just check in with some of the journaling prompts and with this month's audio, which is all around helping you lean into self-leadership and really embrace making these positive changes in your life. So if you hop in there for 14 days, you'll be able to download that audio free of charge. It's not only likely to help you sleep better, but it will also help you to just start rewiring your thinking when you're drifting off to sleep, and start to just feel more empowered and able to do these things without all the worries and all the constant self-questioning. And then the community is just full of these fantastic daily prompts that help you elevate and shift your mindset to a different place and to start to question some deeper things around this that will really help you make progress. So you're very welcome to hop in there, give it a try and take a look at what we've got in there. And I will be back soon. I hope you have a wonderful week and see you in the not too distant future.